Dr. Elena Rodriguez rubbed her tired eyes as she looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost midnight, and her shift at Metropolitan General Hospital was finally coming to an end. She had been working for nearly 16 hours straight, helping patients with complex medical problems that other doctors couldn't solve. As the head of reproductive medicine, she often dealt with the most difficult cases. The emergency department was quieter than usual for a Friday night. Most of the doctors and nurses were getting ready to go home or hand over their duties to the night shift. Elena was packing up her medical bag when suddenly a strange blue light filled the hospital lobby. The security guards jumped up from their chairs, and several nurses stopped what they were doing to stare. Elena had never seen anything like it. The light was soft and gentle, almost like moonlight, but it pulsed with an energy that made the hair on her arms stand up. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the light faded away. Where there had been empty space just moments before, now stood two figures that definitely were not human. The taller figure was clearly an adult, about the same height as Elena, but with skin that had a slight silver tint to it. Her hair was long and seemed to shimmer like water under the hospital lights. She wore clothing that looked like it was made from some kind of fabric Elena had never seen before. It moved and flowed like silk, but it also seemed to glow softly from within. The second figure appeared to be younger, maybe in their early 20s. They were doubled over in pain, clutching their stomach and making soft sounds of distress. Their skin was paler than the adults, and Elena could see beads of sweat forming on their forehead. Elena knew immediately that these were Zalani, the alien species that had made contact with Earth 5 years ago. She had read about them in medical journals, but she had never actually met one in person. The government had said that the Zalani were peaceful and friendly, but meetings between humans and aliens were still very rare. The older Zalani woman looked around the hospital lobby with wide, worried eyes. When she spotted Elena's medical coat and ID badge, she walked quickly toward her. Elena noticed that she moved with a grace that seemed almost like floating. "Please," the alien woman said, and Elena was surprised to hear her speaking perfect English. "My offspring needs help. We have traveled very far to get here." Elena looked more closely at the younger Zalani, who was now sitting on one of the lobby chairs. Their face was twisted with pain, and they were breathing heavily. Whatever was wrong with them, it was clearly serious. "I'm Dr. Rodriguez," Elena said, trying to keep her voice calm and professional. "What's your name, and what seems to be the problem?" "I am Zara," the alien woman replied. "This is my offspring, Kess. They have been sick for many months now, and our doctors cannot help them. We heard that human medicine might be able to do what ours cannot." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. If the Zalani had their own advanced medical technology and they couldn't solve this problem, then whatever was wrong must be incredibly serious. "What are the symptoms?" Elena asked, kneeling down next to Kess to get a better look at them. Zara's eyes filled with something that looked like tears, though they glowed slightly in the hospital lights. "It started 6 months ago. First with Kess, then with other young adults in our colony. They began having terrible pain in their reproductive organs. They cannot eat properly, they cannot sleep, and most importantly—" She paused, as if the next words were too difficult to say. "Most importantly what?" Elena prompted gently. "They cannot form the neural connections necessary for reproduction," Zara whispered. "Without these connections, they cannot have offspring of their own, and the condition is spreading. More and more of our young people are getting sick every day." Elena felt her heart sink. She was beginning to understand the true scope of this problem. This wasn't just about one patient. This was about the survival of an entire species. "How many are affected?" she asked. "In our main colony, nearly 300 young adults are now sick," Zara said. "And we have received reports from other Zalani settlements across the galaxy. The numbers are growing every day. Our scientists estimate that if we cannot find a cure soon, our species may not survive another generation." Elena looked at Kes, who was trying to sit up straighter despite the obvious pain they were in. She could see the hope in their eyes, the desperate belief that somehow human medicine might have an answer that their own doctors had missed. The weight of responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders like a heavy blanket. She had dealt with difficult cases before, but nothing like this. The fate of an entire alien species might depend on what happened in the next few hours and days. "We need to get Kes to an examination room right away," Elena said, signaling to one of the nurses. "And I'm going to call in some specialists. We're going to need all the help we can get." As they helped Kes onto a wheelchair, Elena noticed something interesting. The young Zalani's skin had patterns of very faint light running under it, like veins that glowed softly. But the patterns seemed weak and flickering, not steady like they should be. "Those patterns," Elena said to Zara, "are they supposed to be brighter?" Zara nodded sadly. "Yes. In healthy Zalani, the bioluminescent pathways are strong and steady. They are how we connect with each other, how we share thoughts and emotions, and how we create new life. But in the sick ones, the pathways are dying." Elena realized she was looking at something no human doctor had ever seen before. This wasn't just a medical case. This was a chance to learn about an entirely different form of life, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to save it. As they wheeled Kes toward the examination room, Elena made a silent promise to herself and to Zara. She would do everything in her power to solve this mystery. She would call in every expert she knew, use every piece of equipment the hospital had, and work around the clock if necessary. Behind them, other hospital staff members were already making phone calls and sending messages. Word was spreading quickly through the medical community that something unprecedented was happening at Metropolitan General Hospital. Elena didn't know it yet, but this night would change everything, not just for Kes and Zara, not just for the Zalani species, but for her own understanding of what it meant to be a healer in a universe full of different kinds of life. The real work was just beginning. The next morning, Elena walked into the hospital feeling like she had barely slept. She had spent most of the night reading everything she could find about Zalani biology, which wasn't much. Most of the information was basic stuff about their culture and how they communicated with humans. There was almost nothing about their medical needs or how their bodies worked. She had called 3 of the best specialists she knew, and they were all meeting in Conference Room B at 8 in the morning. Elena checked her watch. It was 7:45, and she could already hear voices coming from down the hall. When she opened the conference room door, she found Dr. James Chen setting up his laptop. James was a xenobiologist, which meant he studied alien life forms. He was one of only 12 people in the world who had that job title, and Elena felt lucky that he worked just 2 hours away at the university. "Morning, Elena," James said, looking up from his computer. "I drove here at 5 this morning after you called. This is the most exciting thing that's happened in my field since the Zalani first made contact." Next to him sat Dr. Amira Hassan, a genetic specialist who could read DNA sequences like other people read books. Elena had worked with Amira on several difficult cases, and she knew that if anyone could understand alien genetics, it would be her. "I brought every scanner and analyzer I could fit in my car," Amira said, pointing to several large cases on the floor. "Though I have to admit, I have no idea if any of this equipment will work on alien biology." The last person in the room was Dr. Michael Barnes, who specialized in fertility and reproductive health. He was probably the most experienced doctor Elena knew when it came to solving problems with how bodies create new life. "All right, everyone," Elena said, closing the door behind her. "Before we start, I need you all to understand something. This isn't just about helping one patient. According to the patient's mother, hundreds of young Zalani are affected by this condition. If we can't figure out what's wrong, an entire species might disappear. The room went quiet. Elena could see the weight of that responsibility settling on everyone's faces. "What do we know so far?" James asked. Elena pulled up the notes she had taken during her conversation with Zara the night before. The Zalani reproduce through something they call neural connections. These connections are made possible by bioluminescent pathways that run through their bodies, kind of like glowing veins. In healthy Zalani, these pathways are bright and steady. In the sick ones, they're dim and flickering. "Interesting," Amira said, making notes on her tablet. "It sounds like their reproductive system is tied directly to their nervous system. That's completely different from how humans work." "There's more," Elena continued. "This condition started appearing about 6 months ago, and it's only affecting young adults who are old enough to reproduce. The Zalani have their own doctors, but they can't figure out what's causing it." Michael leaned forward in his chair. "Did they say anything about when this started? Was there any major change in their environment or lifestyle around that time?" Elena flipped through her notes. "That's a good question. I should ask Zara about that. All I know is that it started in their main colony and then spread to other Zalani settlements." James opened his laptop and started typing. "I'm looking up the location of the main Zalani colony. According to this, they settled on a planet called Kepler 442b about 2 years ago. Before that, they were living on their home world for thousands of years. So they moved to a new planet, and 6 months later, their young people started getting sick," Amira said. "That can't be a coincidence." Elena felt a spark of excitement. This was how medical mysteries got solved. You gathered smart people in a room, shared information, and let them connect the dots in ways that no one person could do alone. "Let's go see our patient," Elena said. "I want you all to examine Kess and see what your equipment can tell us." They gathered up their gear and headed to the special isolation room where Kess was staying. The room had been designed for patients with unusual medical conditions, and it had more monitoring equipment than a regular hospital room. When they walked in, Elena was surprised to see that Kess looked much better than they had the night before. They were sitting up in bed talking quietly with Zara in their own language. The sounds were musical, like singing, but with words Elena couldn't understand. "Good morning," Elena said. "Kess, these are the doctors I told you about. They're here to help us figure out what's making you sick." Kess nodded and said something in Zalani. Zara translated. "Kess says they are grateful for your help, and they will cooperate with any tests you need to do." For the next 4 hours, the team ran every test they could think of. They took blood samples, did genetic scans, and used imaging equipment to look inside Kess's body. What they found was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. "Look at this," Amira said, pointing at her computer screen. "Kess's nervous system is incredibly complex. They have neural pathways running everywhere, not just in their brain and spine like humans do." James was studying the bioluminescent patterns under Kess's skin with a special camera. "These pathways seem to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeat, but the rhythm is irregular. It should be steady, but it keeps stopping and starting." Michael was looking at scans of Kess's reproductive organs. "The strangest thing is that everything looks physically normal. Their organs are healthy. There's no sign of disease or injury. Whatever is causing the problem, it's not something we can see with our regular equipment." Elena felt frustrated. They had been working all morning, and they still didn't understand what was wrong. She walked over to where Zara was sitting and sat down next to her. "Zara, I need to ask you some questions about your colony. James thinks the timing of this illness might be important. Can you tell me about any changes that happened around the time people started getting sick?" Zara thought for a moment. "The only major change was that we moved from our temporary shelters into permanent buildings. We also started using new technology to communicate with Earth." "What kind of technology?" "Communication arrays that can send messages across space instantly. They use very powerful electromagnetic fields." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "Electromagnetic fields." She looked across the room at James. who had obviously heard the same thing. "James," she called out, "what do you know about electromagnetic fields and how they affect biological systems?" James looked up from his equipment. "Quite a lot, actually. Strong electromagnetic fields can interfere with the nervous system. If the Zilani reproductive system is tied to their neural pathways, then electromagnetic interference could be disrupting their ability to reproduce," Elena finished. For the first time since this whole situation started, Elena felt like they might be on the right track. But understanding the problem was only the first step. Now they had to figure out how to fix it. Elena stared at the ceiling of her home office at 3 in the morning, her mind racing with possibilities. She had left the hospital around 11, but sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kess's face and thought about the hundreds of other young Zilani who were suffering from the same mysterious condition. Her desk was covered with printouts, research papers, and notebook pages filled with her handwriting. She had been reading everything she could find about electromagnetic fields and their effects on living creatures. Most of the research was about humans and earth animals, but some of the principles had to be the same. She picked up her coffee mug and realized it was empty, again. This was probably her 6th cup since coming home, but she needed to stay alert. Something was nagging at the back of her mind, some connection she hadn't made yet. Elena pulled up the data from Kess's medical scans on her laptop. The bioluminescent pathways were clearly visible in the images, running through their body like a network of tiny rivers. In some areas, the pathways were completely dark. In others, they flickered weakly, like old light bulbs about to burn out. She opened another file, this one containing information about Earth's magnetic field. Every planet had a magnetic field, and she knew that many animals on Earth used these fields for navigation. Birds, whales, and even some bacteria could sense magnetic changes and use them to find their way around. What if it's not just navigation? Elena whispered to herself. What if the Zilani actually need magnetic fields to function properly? She started typing furiously, searching for any research about magnetic fields and reproductive systems. Most of what she found was about how magnetic fields could interfere with reproduction. But what if it worked the other way around for the Zilani? What if they needed specific magnetic patterns to reproduce? Elena grabbed her phone and called James, even though she knew it was the middle of the night. "Elena?" James answered on the 3rd ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Is everything okay?" "James, I'm sorry to wake you, but I think I figured something out. The Zilani home world. What do you know about its magnetic field?" She could hear James moving around, probably getting out of bed. "Give me a second to look that up." "Okay, here it is. The magnetic field on the Zilani home world is about 3 times stronger than Earth's, and it pulses in a very regular pattern. Why? And what about Kepler 442b, where their colony is now? Let me check. Oh, this is interesting. Kepler 442b has a much weaker magnetic field than their homeworld, and it's very irregular. The magnetic poles actually shift position every few months. Elena felt her heart start beating faster. "James, I think that's it. I think the Zilani reproductive system is designed to work with the specific magnetic field of their home world. When they moved to the colony, their bodies couldn't adjust to the different magnetic environment." "That would explain why only the young adults are affected," James said, sounding more awake now. "They're the ones whose reproductive systems are just starting to mature. The older Zilani had their systems fully developed on the home world." "Exactly. And it explains why the condition started 6 months after they moved to permanent buildings. That's probably when they set up those communication arrays that Zara mentioned. The electromagnetic fields from the arrays made the problem even worse." Elena was already getting dressed while she talked. "I need to get back to the hospital. If I'm right about this, then maybe we can fix it." "Fix it how?" James asked. "I don't know yet, but I have an idea. Can you meet me at the hospital in an hour?" "I'll be there in 45 minutes, James said. Elena drove to the hospital faster than she probably should have, her mind working through the possibilities. If the Zilani needed specific magnetic field patterns to reproduce, then theoretically, they could create an artificial field that mimicked their homeworld. When she got to the hospital, she found James already there, along with Dr. Patricia Kim, the hospital's top biomedical engineer. Elena had called Patricia on the way, hoping she would be willing to help with such an unusual project. "Okay, Elena," Patricia said, looking at the notes Elena had emailed her. "Let me make sure I understand this. You want to build a device that can generate artificial magnetic fields to help an alien species reproduce?" "That's exactly what I want to do," Elena said. "Is it possible?" Patricia smiled. "Honey, I've built devices that can restart a human heart with electricity and machines that can see inside a person's body without cutting them open. Creating artificial magnetic fields is actually pretty straightforward. The tricky part will be getting the patterns exactly right." James opened his laptop and pulled up the data about the Zalani homeworld. According to this research, their planet's magnetic field pulses at a frequency of about 0.3 Hertz, with regular peaks every 4.7 seconds. "I can work with that," Patricia said, already sketching designs on a piece of paper. "We'll need to build something that Kes can wear, probably like a belt or vest. It will have small electromagnetic generators that can create the field patterns we need." Elena felt a surge of excitement but also worry. "How long will it take to build?" "If we work through the night, I can have a prototype ready by tomorrow afternoon." "But Elena, you need to understand something. We'll only get one chance to test this. If we get the frequency wrong, or if the field is too strong or too weak, we could make Kes's condition worse instead of better." Elena thought about that for a moment. It was a huge risk. But what choice did they have? Without treatment, Kes would continue to get worse. And eventually, an entire species might disappear. "Let's do it," Elena said. "But I want to run it by Zara first. She needs to understand the risks." 2 hours later, Elena found herself explaining the theory to Zara in Kes's hospital room. The alien mother listened carefully, asking questions about how the device would work and what could go wrong. "Dr. Rodriguez," Zara said finally, "my people have a saying. Sometimes the path forward requires walking through the storm. Kes is dying slowly without treatment. At least your device offers hope." Kes, who had been listening to the conversation, spoke up in English. "I want to try it. If it works, it could help all of our people. If it doesn't work, at least we tried." Elena felt a lump form in her throat. Here was a young person, barely an adult, willing to risk everything for the chance to save their entire species. "All right then," Elena said. "Patricia, let's build this thing." The next 18 hours were the longest of Elena's life. She stayed at the hospital, helping Patricia and James fine-tune the design of the magnetic field generator. They tested it on computers first, making sure the field patterns matched what they knew about the Zalani home world. When Patricia finally announced that the device was ready, Elena's hands were shaking with nervousness. The device looked surprisingly simple. Just a thin belt with small metal components built into it. But those components could create magnetic fields precise enough to hopefully restart Kes's reproductive system. "Remember," Patricia said as they prepared to test the device, "we start with the lowest possible setting and gradually increase the power. If Kes feels any pain or discomfort, we stop immediately." Elena looked at Kes, who was sitting calmly on the hospital bed, and at Zara, whose face showed both hope and fear. In a few minutes, they would know if months of work and sleepless nights had been worth it. "Are you ready?" Elena asked. Kes nodded. "Let's make history." Elena's hands trembled slightly as she helped Kes put on the magnetic field device. The belt was surprisingly light, and the metal components hummed softly when Patricia turned it on. Everyone in the room held their breath as they watched the small display screen that showed the device was working. "How does it feel?" Elena asked, watching Kes's face carefully for any sign of discomfort. "It feels warm," Kes said, placing a hand over the device. like sunshine on my skin, but from the inside. Patricia slowly increased the power setting, monitoring both the device and Kess's vital signs on the hospital equipment. Elena watched the bioluminescent pathways under Kess's skin, hoping to see some change. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Elena started to worry that their theory was wrong, that they had built an expensive device that wouldn't help anyone. But then, Zara gasped and pointed at Kess's arm. "Look," she whispered. One of the dim pathways under Kess's skin was starting to glow brighter. It was faint at first, barely noticeable, but as they watched, the light grew stronger and steadier. Then another pathway began to brighten, and another. "It's working," James said, unable to keep the excitement out of his voice. "The magnetic field is actually restoring their neural pathways." Kess looked down at their own arm in amazement. "I can feel it happening. It's like parts of my body that were asleep are waking up again." Over the next hour, more and more of Kess's bioluminescent pathways came back to life. The patterns that had been dark and broken were now glowing with soft, steady light. Elena had never seen anything so beautiful in all her years as a doctor. But the real test came 2 days later, when another young Zelani arrived at the hospital. This one was named Vale, and they were in even worse condition than Kess had been. Their pathways were almost completely dark, and they could barely stand up without help. Elena felt nervous as they fitted Vale with a second magnetic device that Patricia had built. What if it only worked for Kess? What if each Zelani needed different settings? But her worries disappeared when Vale's pathways began to brighten, just like Kess's had. "Dr. Rodriguez," Vale said on their 3rd day of treatment, "my people will sing songs about you for generations. You have given us back our future." As word spread about the successful treatment, more Zelani began arriving at the hospital. Elena found herself working with alien patients every day, learning more about their culture and biology with each case. She discovered that the Zelani saw medicine very differently than humans did. For us, healing is not just about fixing what is broken, Zara explained one afternoon as they sat in the hospital garden. It is about understanding how all things are connected. Your heart, your mind, your place in the universe, they are all part of the same whole. Elena found this way of thinking fascinating. In human medicine, doctors usually focused on specific problems, a broken bone, an infection, a failing organ. But the Zelani approach was more holistic. They believed that to truly heal someone, you had to understand not just their body, but their emotions, their relationships, and their spiritual needs. "Can you teach me more about this?" Elena asked. "I've been a doctor for 15 years, but I feel like I'm learning things I never knew before." Zara smiled, and the bioluminescent patterns under her skin pulsed gently. Elena had learned that this was how the Zelani showed happiness. "I would be honored to share our knowledge with you. But you must understand, learning our way of healing means more than just reading about it. It means experiencing it." Over the following weeks, Zara taught Elena meditation techniques that the Zelani used to connect with their patients. She learned how to sense the energy patterns that flowed through living beings, and how to use that knowledge to better understand what her patients needed. Elena started applying these techniques with her human patients too, and was amazed by the results. A woman who had been trying to have a baby for years finally got pregnant after Elena helped her deal with the stress and anxiety that had been affecting her hormone levels. An elderly man's chronic pain improved dramatically when Elena took time to listen to his worries about his family. "You're becoming a different kind of doctor," her colleague Dr. Martinez observed one day. "I don't know what those aliens taught you, but your patients seem much happier." Elena realized he was right. She was changing, becoming more than just someone who diagnosed problems and prescribed treatments. She was learning to see each patient as a complete person, with feelings and fears and hopes that all affected their physical health. Meanwhile, Kess was getting stronger every day. The young Zalani had become something of a celebrity at the hospital, as staff members stopped by to check on their progress and marvel at the glowing patterns under their skin. But more importantly, Kes was able to connect with other Zalani in ways that had been impossible when they were sick. "Watch this," Kes said one day, holding hands with Vale. As Elena watched in amazement, the bioluminescent pathways in both young Zalani began to pulse in perfect synchronization. Their faces took on expressions of deep peace and joy. "This is how we share thoughts and emotions," Kes explained, "and this is how we create new life. The neural connection allows our consciousness to merge temporarily, creating the spark that becomes a new being." Elena was witnessing something no human had ever seen before, the actual process by which the Zalani reproduced. It wasn't just physical, like human reproduction. It was a joining of minds and souls that created something entirely new. As more Zalani patients recovered, Elena began to understand that she wasn't just treating a medical condition, she was helping to preserve a way of life that was completely different from anything on Earth. The Zalani didn't just see themselves as individuals. They saw themselves as part of a vast, interconnected web of consciousness that included all living things. "Your species and mine have much to learn from each other," Zara said one evening as they watched the sunset from the hospital roof. "Humans have incredible individual strength and creativity, but we Zalani understand the power of connection and unity. Together, we could accomplish things that neither of us could do alone." Elena nodded, feeling the truth of those words deep in her heart. When this all started, she had thought she was just helping to solve a medical problem, but it had become so much more than that. She was building a bridge between two completely different forms of intelligent life. The last patient in their current group, a young Zalani named River, was scheduled to complete their treatment the next day. After that, they would all return to their colony to share the knowledge they had gained and help other sick Zalani get better. But Elena knew that this wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning. The relationships she had built with Zara, Kes, and the other Zalani would continue long after they left Earth. And the things she had learned about healing and connection would change how she practiced medicine for the rest of her life. As she walked home that night, Elena felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had always known that being a doctor was about helping people, but she had never imagined that helping people could change her own life so completely. 6 months had passed since Kes and the other Zalani patients had returned to their colony. Elena often found herself thinking about them, wondering how they were doing and whether the magnetic field treatment was still working. She had received a few messages through the interplanetary communication system, brief updates letting her know that more young Zalani were recovering and that the colony was thriving again. Elena's own life had changed dramatically since then. She had started incorporating Zalani healing techniques into her practice, and word had spread throughout the medical community. Doctors from around the world were coming to visit her, wanting to learn about this new approach to medicine that treated not just the body, but the whole person. She was in her office, reviewing patient files, when her assistant knocked on the door. "Dr. Rodriguez, there's someone here to see you. She says you know her, but she doesn't have an appointment." Elena looked up, puzzled. "Did she give you a name?" "She said her name is Zara, and that you would want to see her immediately." Elena's heart jumped. She hadn't expected to see Zara again so soon. "Send her in right away." When the door opened, Elena was amazed by what she saw. Zara looked healthier and happier than she had ever seen her. The alien woman's bioluminescent patterns were glowing brightly under her skin, and she moved with a grace and energy that seemed almost magical. "Elena, my dear friend," Zara said, embracing her warmly, "I have traveled far to see you, and I bring wonderful news." "How is everyone?" Elena asked, hardly able to contain her excitement. "How is Kes? Are the treatments still working?" Zara's face lit up with joy. "The treatments are working perfectly. Not only have all of our young people recovered, but we have had our first new births in over a year. 3 healthy offspring have been born in the past month, and more are expected soon. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. That's incredible news. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. But that is not the only reason I came, Zara said, reaching into a small bag she was carrying. I have brought you something. 2 things, actually. The first is from our entire colony. She pulled out what looked like a small crystal about the size of Elena's palm. It was perfectly clear, but it seemed to have light moving inside it, like trapped stars. This is a Zalani life site scanner, Zara explained. It can detect health problems in any living being long before they become serious. It works by reading the energy patterns that flow through all life forms. Elena took the crystal carefully, amazed by how warm it felt in her hands. How does it work? Simply hold it near a patient and focus your mind on wanting to understand their health. The crystal will show you patterns of light that represent different aspects of their physical and emotional well-being. Areas that glow brightly are healthy. Areas that are dim or dark indicate problems. Elena stared at the device in wonder. This was technology far beyond anything humans had developed. With this scanner, she could detect diseases years before they showed symptoms, could see emotional trauma that was causing physical illness, could understand her patients in ways she had never imagined possible. Zara, this is an incredible gift, but I can't accept something so valuable. You saved our species, Zara replied firmly. This scanner has been blessed by our highest healers and infused with the gratitude of every Zalani in our colony. It is yours by right. Elena felt overwhelmed by the generosity of the gift, but Zara wasn't finished. The second gift is more personal, Zara said, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with deep emotion. Elena Rodriguez, I would like to formally invite you to become a sister healer in our culture. This is an honor that has never been given to someone from another species. What does that mean? Elena asked. It means that you would be considered family to every Zalani in the galaxy. It means that our knowledge of healing would be yours to share, and your knowledge would become ours. It means that you would be connected to our collective consciousness, able to understand and communicate with us in ways that go beyond words. Elena felt her heart racing. This was an offer beyond her wildest dreams, but also one that scared her a little. What would the ceremony involve? A brief neural connection, similar to what you saw between Kess and Vale. I would share a small portion of our collective consciousness with you, and you would share your own unique perspective with us. It would not change who you are, but it would give you new abilities and a deeper understanding of life itself. Elena thought about everything that had happened over the past months. She thought about how much she had already learned from the Zalani and how much more there was to discover. She thought about the patients she could help with the new scanner and the expanded knowledge that would come with being a sister healer. Yes, she said quietly, I would be honored to accept. The ceremony was simple but profound. Zara placed her hands gently on Elena's temples, and Elena felt a warm, tingling sensation spreading through her mind. For just a moment, she could sense the thoughts and feelings of thousands of Zalani across the galaxy. She could feel their gratitude, their joy, their hope for the future. But more than that, she could suddenly understand things about healing that she had never known before. She could sense the energy patterns that Zara had talked about, could feel the connections between physical health and emotional well-being in ways that went far beyond her medical training. When the connection ended, Elena felt different. Not changed in any fundamental way, but expanded. Like she had been living in a small room her whole life and had suddenly discovered that there were many more rooms in the house. Welcome to our family, Sister Healer Elena, Zara said, tears of joy glowing in her eyes. In the months that followed, Elena established the first interspecies medical clinic on Earth. Human patients came to be treated with a combination of traditional medicine and Zelani healing techniques. But more surprisingly, other alien species who had heard about her work began to visit as well. Elena found herself treating patients she had never imagined possible. There was Thorin, a crystalline being whose body was slowly cracking due to exposure to Earth's atmosphere. There was Luna, a shapeshifter who had become stuck in human form and couldn't change back. Each case taught her something new about the incredible diversity of life in the universe. But the most rewarding part was training other doctors in the integrated approach she had developed. Elena started a medical school program that combined human medical knowledge with alien healing techniques. Students came from all over Earth and beyond to learn this new way of practicing medicine. Years later, as Elena looked back on that night when Zara and Kes had first appeared in her hospital, she could hardly believe how much her life had changed. She had started out as a competent doctor who helped people with reproductive problems. Now she was a bridge between species, a teacher, and a healer who understood that medicine was about so much more than just fixing what was broken. The crystal scanner sat on her desk, glowing softly as it always did. Next to it was a photo of the first graduation ceremony at her medical school, showing human and alien students standing together, ready to go out into the galaxy and heal whoever needed their help. Elena smiled as she looked at the photo. Sometimes the most important moments in life came when you least expected them. A desperate mother asking for help had led to discoveries that changed not just medicine, but Elena's entire understanding of what it meant to be alive in a universe full of different kinds of consciousness. She picked up the scanner and headed out to see her next patient, ready for whatever new challenge the day might bring. After all, there was always someone who needed healing, and now she had the tools and knowledge to help in ways she had never imagined possible.